A Russian court has found U.S. basketball player Brittney Griner guilty of drugs possession and smuggling. She has been sentenced to 9 years in jail. The sports star was arrested for carrying a vape pen and cartridges in her luggage, which contained marijuana oil. Russian authorities said the charges brought against her were fully proven. The U.S. says she's been wrongfully detained. Before the sentencing, Griner pleaded with the judge for a favorable ruling. Well, a short while ago, Deputy Chief of Mission at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, Elizabeth Rood, had this reaction outside the courtroom.
Today, U.S. citizen athlete Brittney Griner, who is admired by millions of fans in the United States as well as here in Russia, was sentenced to 9 years in prison for nothing more than an intentional oversight. This is a miscarriage of justice. The U.S. Department of State has determined that Ms. Griner was wrongfully detained. Nothing in today's decision changes that determination.
Let's get more on this story from DW's Russia analyst Konstantin Eggert. Konstantin, are you surprised by this verdict?
Claire, not at all. According to statistics, only 1% of sentences in Russian courts and in acquittal. So Brittney Griner is pretty much a standard case. Secondly, it doesn't really matter whether these hash ampoules were planted on her, which is quite a frequent occurrence in Russia, or she really carried them. Ever since she was detained, she became a valuable hostage for the Kremlin, also a very high-profile one. So this decision was predestined. You don't swap, you don't exchange people in such circumstances without very very sort of high-profile sentence. So 9 years is what I actually predicted.
And indeed, we know there have been high-level diplomatic efforts between Lavrov and Blinken discussing an exchange of Russian and American prisoners. Are you saying that this is what this case is all about?
Yes, although she was arrested just a week before Putin's second invasion of Ukraine on the 24th of February. But ever since that day, the stakes are very high. And of course, Putin has a very long-standing dream. He wants to get Viktor Bout, a Russian pilot who is serving a very long sentence, I think it's a life sentence, in the U.S. for arms smuggling. He wants to get him back. He's become a kind of symbol in Russia, a symbol of someone who's wronged by America. And I think that Griner and another American, Paul Whelan, who is also serving a jail sentence in Russia, may be the pawns in this game.
You mentioned Viktor Bout. He's convicted, as you say, on much more serious grounds than carrying cannabis oil. He's a convicted arms trafficker, dubbed the Merchant of Death in the United States. Do you think this would be a fair swap?
Well, such swaps are never fair. If you look at the history of the Cold War, these kind of dramatic exchanges of spies on the Bridge of Spies in Berlin, I think it was never, there was never a measure of whether it's fair or not. It's always the fairness, if you wish, is in the eyes of the exchanger. I think if both sides think that their citizens, well, should be back, then it's satisfying for them. There's never an objective measure of fairness or not. The crimes are not comparable, of course, and Russian courts are not comparable to American courts, but well, that's a reality, and one has to accept it. I mean, I'm sure Joe Biden wants the Americans back, and I'm sure that Putin wants another propaganda victory, which Griner's exchange will probably grant him very soon.
It does indeed bring back memories of the Cold War. With relations between Russia and the United States at such a low point, are we likely to see more of this kind of thing?
Yes, it does. I mean, I think it will be more difficult now with much fewer Americans traveling to Russia. I mean, how can you grab them? I mean, as I said, Griner was arrested a week before the invasion. But I mean, Putin, I think, can always find a way of tickling the U.S., and the U.S. will always find a way of responding. This is indeed a bit like a Cold War in the age of social media.
All right, DW's Russia analyst Konstantin Eggert, thank you so much for joining us with that update.